This story is shared for educational and awareness purposes to highlight the importance of trust, communication, and recognizing signs of deception in relationships. The strangest thing about realizing your life is a lie is how ordinary the moment of discovery can be. There was no dramatic thunderclap, no chilling piece of evidence left carelessly in the open. It was a Tuesday. I was sorting laundry, the hum of the washing machine, a familiar, monotonous soundtrack to my afternoon. Mark's shirt, a crisp blue one he'd worn to work the day before, was in my hands. I was about to toss it into the dark load when I caught a scent that wasn't his. It wasn't his cologne, the one I'd bought him for his birthday, the one called Triumph that smelled of sandalwood and citrus. This was something else, something floral and soft, a whisper of jasmine and vanilla, a woman's fragrance. My first thought was absurdly practical. The dry cleaners, maybe the bag had brushed against someone else's clothes, but a cold, sharp little needle of doubt pricked at the comfortable fabric of my certainty. I stood there, frozen in the humid laundry room, holding the shirt to my face, inhaling a story I didn't want to read. I decided then and there to be a detective in my own life, not a hysterical wife, not an accusatory partner, a collector of facts. I placed the shirt back in the hamper and went about my day, but the world had tilted on its axis. Colors seemed slightly off, sounds were muffled. Mark came home at his usual time. 6:30 on the dot, he kissed my cheek, asked about my day, complimented the pasta I'd made. He was the picture of my husband, but I was watching him now through a new, fractured lens. I started noticing things. The way his phone, which used to live on the coffee table, now never left his pocket. The new passcode on his iPad, the one we used to watch recipes on together. The quick work drinks that seemed to happen with a new, unnamed frequency. He'd mention it was Steve from accounting, but his voice would have a rehearsed quality, a little too casual. A week after the fragrance incident, he told me he was going on a weekend fishing trip with his old college friends. He'd packed his gear with a boyish enthusiasm that felt performative. "The signal is terrible up at the lake, honey," he said, kissing my forehead. "Don't worry if you can't get through." I nodded, my face a mask of wifely support. "Have fun, catch a big one." The moment his car disappeared down the street, the mask fell away. I wasn't a detective anymore. I was an archaeologist excavating the ruins of my own marriage. I went into his study, a room I rarely entered, a space that was wholly his. It was tidy, organized, too organized. I started with the filing cabinet, then his desk drawers, nothing but insurance papers and old tax returns. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs, part shame for this invasion, part desperate need for the truth. It was in the last drawer I checked, tucked beneath a stack of faded concert t-shirts he never wore, that I found it. Not a love letter, not a revealing photograph, a credit card statement for an account I didn't know existed. My hands trembled as I scanned the charges. There were dinners at restaurants we'd never been to, charges from a boutique hotel in the city just 40 minutes away, and a recurring monthly payment to a florist I didn't recognize. The dates were a map of his deceit, a dinner on the night he said he was working late, the hotel charge on a day he'd attended a seminar. I felt the air leave my lungs. I sank to the floor, the cold hardwood biting through my jeans. The evidence was sterile, financial, but it painted a picture more vivid and painful than any passionate letter could. This was calculated. This was a second life, financed in secret. The pain wasn't a sharp stab. It was a deep, spreading ache, a coldness that started in my core and seeped into my very bones. I cried. Of course I did. Silent, heaving sobs there on the floor of a study, surrounded by the artifacts of the man I thought I knew. But then something else rose up through the grief. It was cold and hard and clear. It was fury. This wasn't just a betrayal of love. It was a betrayal of our partnership, of the home we'd built, of the future we'd planned. He hadn't just strayed. He had meticulously built a cage of lies and locked me inside it, thinking I was too naive, too trusting, too unaware to notice. I wiped my tears, my jaw set. I carefully placed the statement back exactly as I had found it. I walked out of his study and into the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of water, my hand steady. I looked out the window at our garden, the one we'd planted together, the one I tended to alone most weekends while he was playing golf. He thought he was the smart one. He thought he had it all under control. He had no idea that the quiet, supportive wife he took for granted was gone. In her place was someone he wouldn't recognize. The hunt for evidence was over. Now it was time to plan. This wasn't about winning him back. This was about something far more satisfying. This was about justice. And I was going to make sure he got exactly what he deserved. The game was on, but he didn't know the rules had just changed. He didn't know his opponent, and that was going to be his greatest mistake. The next few weeks were the strangest of my life. I moved through my days like a ghost in my own home, a smile perfectly pasted on my face, my voice steady and warm. I made Mark's favorite meatloaf. I asked about his fishing trip, listening with feigned interest to his elaborate, entirely fictional story about the one that got away. I was an actress playing the role of a lifetime, the happy, unaware wife, and I was giving an Oscar-worthy performance. But inside, I was a general preparing for war. My heart, which had once been so soft and open to him, was now a vault, cold and impenetrable. Every kind word I spoke, every meal I cooked was a strategic move. I needed him comfortable, complacent, utterly convinced that his secret world was still perfectly hidden. Trust is a beautiful thing to build, but it's an even more powerful tool to weaponize once it's been broken. He trusted me completely. That was his second greatest mistake. My investigation became more focused, more daring. I didn't need emotional proof anymore. I needed irrefutable, logistical evidence. I needed the blueprint of his deception. One evening, as he snored softly beside me, I carefully lifted his thumb and pressed it to the fingerprint sensor on his phone. It unlocked. My hands didn't even shake anymore. I slipped out of bed and into the bathroom, locking the door. I wasn't interested in affectionate messages. Those could be deleted, explained away. I went for the infrastructure of the secret connection. I scanned his email for confirmations from that boutique hotel. I found them. Weekend getaways, all under the guise of his fishing trips. I checked his Google Maps timeline. It was a damning diary of his lies. After work, drives to a quiet suburban neighborhood across town, not to Steve's house, but to a pretty little cul-de-sac named Willow Lane. I screenshotted everything, sending the images to a secret email account I created. The most chilling discovery was in his photos. He was clever. There were no pictures of her, no close selfies, but he had photos of things. A bouquet of sunflowers on a restaurant table. The same sunflowers whose charge I'd seen on the secret credit card. A picture of a sunset from a balcony I didn't recognize, and then a photo of a handwritten note. A grocery list stuck to a fridge with a magnet I'd never seen. It was her handwriting. And at the bottom it said, "Don't forget the wine for tonight, XL." I zoomed in on the magnet. It was a small silver letter, Angela. Her name was Angela. I found it by cross-referencing the Willow Lane address with a People Finder website, using a small portion of the money from our joint savings account. Money I told Mark I'd used for a new gardening set. Angela Miller. 34. A paralegal. Her social media was set to private, but her profile picture was enough. A woman with a warm smile and kind eyes, standing in front of the same balcony from the sunset photo in Mark's phone. She wasn't some predatory villain. She looked normal, nice, even. The realization was a new kind of pain. This wasn't a brief mistake with a stranger. This was a relationship. He had taken her to dinners, bought her flowers, shared sunsets with her. He was building a second life with her, brick by brick, while I was home watering his petunias. The anger solidified into something pure and sharp, a diamond of cold resolve. He hadn't just betrayed me. He had betrayed her too. He was lying to both of us, playing husband to two women, financing his double life with the security of our marriage. My response, I decided, would not be loud or messy. It would not involve screaming matches or destructive acts. That would be too easy for him. It would give him a way to paint me as the unstable woman, to play the victim. No, I wanted him to feel the full crushing weight of his own choices. I wanted his deception to be displayed not in anger, but in devastating, quiet clarity for everyone who mattered to him to see. I wanted to dismantle the life he'd built, not with a wrecking ball, but by carefully pulling out the keystone and watching the whole structure tumble down around him. The perfect opportunity presented itself 3 weeks later. His parents were celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary. A huge party was planned at a nice restaurant with all his family and our closest friends in attendance. Mark was proud of his parents' enduring marriage. He often held it up as an example, the golden standard. The hypocrisy was so thick I could taste it. He was buzzing with excitement about the party. "It's going to be perfect, isn't it?" he said one night, grinning as he looked over the menu the restaurant had sent. "Oh, it will be," I said, my voice smooth as silk. "It will be absolutely unforgettable. I've even prepared a little slideshow for them, a tribute to 50 years of love and commitment." His face lit up. "Honey, that's so thoughtful. You're amazing." I smiled back. "I know." The day before the party, I executed the final phase of my plan. I called in a favor from an old friend who worked in IT. I handed him a USB drive containing all my evidence. The credit card statements, the hotel confirmations, the maps timeline, the photos of sunsets and grocery lists. I asked him to create a slideshow, a very specific slideshow. It started with sweet, genuine pictures of his parents through the years. Then it was supposed to transition to pictures of us, a tribute to the next generation of love. The transition is the most important part, I told my friend, my voice steady. I wanted it to be seamless. He looked at the files, his eyes widening in understanding. He didn't ask questions. He just nodded, a grim look of solidarity on his face. It will be flawless. On the morning of the party, I felt a surreal sense of calm. I did my hair. I put on a beautiful navy blue dress. The one Mark always said made me look elegant. I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back was not a victim. She was a force of nature. Mark was in a jovial mood, whistling as he tied his tie. "Ready to go, sweetheart?" he asked, grabbing the car keys. "I was born ready," I said, picking up my purse. Inside, next to my lipstick, was the silver USB drive, the weapon that looked like a gift, the final perfect piece of my response. The audience was gathering, and soon, very soon, the star of the show was going to have his world come crashing down in the most spectacular way imaginable. He was about to learn that the quiet wife he underestimated was the one who held all the power. The ballroom was beautiful, bathed in the soft golden light of 100 candles. It smelled of expensive fragrance, roasted meat, and the faint sweet scent of the massive floral arrangements on every table. Everyone was there. Mark's entire family, his brothers with their wives, his elderly aunts and uncles, our closest friends from over the years, and Mark, my husband, was in his element. He stood near the head table, laughing loudly at something his father said, clapping a hand on his brother's shoulder. He looked handsome in his dark suit, the picture of a devoted son, a successful man, a loyal husband. The hypocrisy was so thick in the air, I could barely breathe. I circulated through the room, a serene smile on my lips, my navy blue dress swishing calmly around my knees. I accepted compliments on the organization of the party. I hugged his mother, who tearfully told me how lucky her son was to have me. Each kind word was another log on the pyre I was about to light. Mark asked, slipping an arm around my waist. I said, leaning into him, playing my part until the final curtain. I'm just going to give the USB drive to the AV guy for the slideshow. Your mom is so excited to see it. He beamed a picture of pride. You're the best. I walked away from him, my heels clicking a steady, purposeful rhythm on the polished floor. The young man running the audio-visual setup was in a small booth at the back of the room. This is the slideshow for the Andersons' anniversary, I said, my voice even. It's very important that you play it exactly as it's formatted on the drive. I returned to my seat at the head table, right beside Mark. He squeezed my hand under the table. Nervous? I laughed at the appropriate times. Inside, I was a still, silent lake waiting for the earthquake. Finally, the time came. Mark's brother David gave a heartfelt, funny best man speech that had the entire room roaring with laughter and dabbing at their eyes. He raised a toast to his parents. 50 years of love. Everyone clinked glasses. The mood was warm, sentimental, perfect. As David sat down to thunderous applause, the room lights dimmed slightly. The large screen at the front of the room, which had been showing a looping photo of his parents' wedding, went black for a second. This was it. Mark leaned over. The first image was his parents on their wedding day, young and hopeful. A collective awe swept the room, then another of them holding Mark as a baby. Then the kids on a Christmas morning. The photos were beautiful, a testament to a life built together. I could feel Mark's parents beaming with happiness beside us. The music swelled gently, signaling a transition. The title, A Legacy of Love, appeared on the screen, elegant script. Mark squeezed my hand again. Then the screen went black for a beat. The music stopped. A new image appeared. It wasn't a family photo. It was a credit card statement, magnified to be perfectly legible to every person in the room. A charge for the Willow Inn was circled in bold, glaring red. The date underneath was from a month ago, a weekend Mark had told me he was on a fishing trip. A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. What is this? Mark whispered, his hand freezing around mine. Another image. A screenshot from Google Maps. His phone's location pinpointed not on a lake, but on Willow Lane. Then the photo he'd taken of the sunset from Angela's balcony. Then a close-up of the grocery list on her fridge. The XO and the silver A magnet crystal clear. The room was utterly silent now. The only sound was the faint whir of the projector. I could feel the heat of Mark's panic radiating off him. He was frozen, a statue of dawning horror. Turn it off, he finally hissed, half rising from his chair, but it was too late. The final image filled the screen. It was a Photoshop picture created by my clever friend. On the left was our wedding photo, me looking at Mark with utter adoration, him smiling at the camera. On the right was a picture of Angela from her social media profile. In the middle, in huge bold letters, it read, A gasp went through the room, sharp and unified. I heard his mother sob. I let go of Mark's cold, clammy hand. His face was ashen, his eyes wide with terror and shame. He was exposed, utterly and completely, before the people whose opinion he valued most. I didn't say a word to him. I didn't need to. I turned to his parents, my expression full of a sorrow that wasn't entirely feigned. I laid my napkin neatly on my chair, and then I walked. I walked past the tables of stunned guests, their mouths agape, their eyes wide with a mixture of horror and morbid fascination. I walked out of the ballroom, through the hushed lobby, and out into the cool, clean night air. I didn't look back. I could hear the first wave of furious, confused chatter erupt behind me as the doors swung shut. I got into my car, the one I had secretly moved the title into my name only the week before. I drove away, not to the house we shared, but to a quiet hotel downtown I'd booked for the week. My phone began to vibrate incessantly in my purse. Calls from Mark, from his family, from friends. I turned it off. Mark had spent the night fielding furious calls from his family. His father wouldn't speak to him. His mother was devastated. Angela, it turned out, had been told by Mark that we were separated and heading for divorce. She saw the pictures a concerned friend had sent her from the party and had called him, screaming, before promptly blocking him on everything. His perfect double life had been vaporized in a single spectacular flash of truth. The divorce was swift. My lawyer, armed with the evidence I'd meticulously gathered, eviscerated him. He got nothing he wanted. He lost the house, a significant portion of his savings, and most importantly, he lost his reputation. The man who prized image above all else was now the punchline of a sad, pathetic joke. I saw him once, months later, during the final signing of the papers. He looked hollowed out, older. He tried to speak to me, to say something about being sorry, about how I destroyed him. I finally broke my silence. "I didn't destroy you, Mark," I said, my voice quiet but absolute. "I merely held up a mirror. You destroyed yourself the moment you decided to lie." I turned and walked away for the last time. It was the reclamation of my own story. He had tried to write me as a minor, foolish character in the narrative of his life.